Authorities say the first phase of the maintenance of the air traffic management system at the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines was successfully done today. Preparations now underway for the second phase of the maintenance activity of the CAAP set 2 weeks from now. The scheduled 6-hour shutdown of Philippine airspace will affect over 100 flights and thousands of passengers. But today's and the May 17 shutdown are precisely to avoid even another worse shutdown, such as what happened on New Year's Day. But that's not the only turbulence in the aviation industry. The acting general manager of the Manila International Airport Authority was ordered suspended by the Ombudsman following a complaint made by anonymous employees of alleged grave abuse of authority. The MIAA urges airlines to recalibrate their flight schedules and inform passengers of possible changes.
Maganda rito, pag natapos naman ito, tuloy-tuloy na, wala na tayong magiging problema kasi may redundancy ng tinatawag. Pag bumigay yung isang equipment, sasaluhin yung isa.
Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment. Fixed Politics as usual. May 17 is the day the country's airspace will shut down again from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. with the intent of providing more reliable power supply at the airport. To provide us more details on this and, of course, talk about the turbulence, the other kind of turbulence that's going on in the aviation industry, we have our first guest tonight via Zoom, the newly appointed officer in charge of the Manila International Airport Authority, Brian Ko. And later on in the show, to talk about economic repercussions of the shutdown, we'll also speak to economist Michael Ricafort later on in the show, like I said. Good evening. So, Brian, let's begin with you. Ang timing ng appointment mo, kung kailan magme-maintenance, ano?
Yes, ma'am. So again, thank you for inviting us to your program so that, of course, we can share some of the things that will be happening by May 17 with regard to the CAAP's shutdown so that they can upgrade the UPS system of our air traffic management system.
Mm-hmm. Before we talk about the political turbulence, let's talk first about what's going to happen for May 17. The preparations that are in place for this, because we do expect flights to be affected, right?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, just to brief you, the first phase of that upgrade happened already early today. The CAAP had a 2-hour window between 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock that were supposed to replace the AVR of the CNS ATM system of that manages our air traffic control in the country. So they were able to successfully replace that, and by 2:30, they were already done with the equipment changes, and there were no flights that were affected today. But on the 17th of May, there will be another upgrade, which will be the UPS system. But by doing this, the CAAP will have a better redundancy, and their systems, of course, will be upgraded so that it will be more resilient from future issues such as what happened in January 1st. But because of that major upgrade, there will be an airspace shutdown between 12 midnight until 6 a.m. on May 17th. And for Manila alone, because we manage the Manila airport side, and we've spoken to our stakeholders in the airlines, there will be around 130 flights that will be affected within that window, or around 20,000 passengers who have to be advised about their retiming of flights or consolidation or possible movement of their flights to a later time.
But of course, Brian, this is very important that we do this. Kanina, you said UPS, so of course, uninterruptible power supply for the CNS, Communication Navigation System, ng CAAP, ng ATM ng CAAP. In other words, if we don't have that up and running and well-oiled, we're going to witness accidents in the air and on the ground if we don't fix that, right?
You are right in terms of the need for the upgrade. It's very much needed so that we can avoid any possible issue similar to what happened in January 1, where there were hundreds of flights that were affected and thousands of passengers impacted by an airspace closure. So as discussed by the CAAP, this will be preventive maintenance, meaning we're planning for it. That's why the CAAP has given the airlines and the airports much advance notice. In fact, as early as last week, we were already given issued the NOTAM, or the notice to airmen, indicating the maintenance window for the needed upgrade by CAAP. That lead time is very much necessary for the airlines and, of course, the airport authorities to draft their contingency plans. And, of course, the most important thing is to inform the passengers about the possible changes in their itinerary.
All right. Brian, you have shutdowns, of course, and leadership changes in the MIAA, even if temporary. Is this like turbulence also, or worse?
In terms of the changes right now, of course, I was installed by the board to be the OIC, or a caretaker of the MIA, while the GM Cesar Chong, is currently away because of a preventive suspension order by the Ombudsman. As to the details of the case, I would not be able to discuss that because of the ongoing investigation. But we do not expect any major changes. Of course, it will be a seamless transition. I've worked with the GM previously, and I was his deputy, and I worked with the DOTR secretary. So we will pursue all of the plans that we've started, so that we have one goal in improving our airports and creating a more favorable environment, or a better passenger experience to all of our users.
All right. So in other words, this is not turbulence at all.
Well, of course, this is a bump.
Bump, okay.
It's very
Parang
sudden,
ganun-
and
ganun lang.
we were all caught by surprise about what happened. But of course, with anything, with our years in the aviation industry, we're always prepared for the unusual, and we have to have contingencies, and part of that is business continuity. That's why everything will go forward with the MIA in terms of the plans and programs. And of course, our main goal is to make sure the airport's up and running to serve our passengers.
Very good. That sounds good, no? Na tuloy-tuloy lang. In other words, it's a very professional approach. You have years of experience, like you mentioned. You were with PALX, right? And I want to go straight into this, no? Was there sabotage? There are rumors to that effect. So was there sabotage at all?
We cannot say there's sabotage.
I'm sorry,
but,
referring to
right
the
now,
brownout kahapon, the other day. Sige, go ahead.
correct, for the May 1 incident. But like the DOTR Secretary Jimmy Bautista said, that we're not ruling out any possible angle. That's why part of the approach is to have an joint investigation team with the different government agencies. We've involved NICA, the intelligence agency. We've involved the PNP, our MIAA security, and the other law enforcement units of the government, so that we can thoroughly investigate what happened in May 1. While we're not saying it's sabotage, we're not ruling it out as well until we gather all of the data. The kickoff meeting started yesterday, and we're expecting by mid next week we will have an update with the investigating team as they go around the airport and interview different people and look at the facilities that were affected.
Yeah, good that you're not ruling out anything. And interesting that you say NICA is involved, because this is a national security issue, right? Because this is the country's international gateway, airport, terminals. Dito dumadaan lahat ng tao. If anything goes wrong, we have so many lives literally on the line, right, Brian?
Yes, ma'am. You're correct that Manila International Airport, MIAA, is the primary gateway in and out of our country. And of course, we take very high importance in terms of safety and security. That it's a matter that of course we would like to prioritize. That's why we're involving the intelligence agencies, as well as different independent experts, so that they can weigh in on the situation and look at the possible root causes, so that we can avoid any possible future disruptions.
Okay, because if there was sabotage, I want to say that this is a very, very serious matter, and this is almost criminal. Right?
You are correct. If the activity on May 1 was something premeditated and was intentional, of course it's something criminal to do that kind of disruption to a very vital facility in our country.
Are you looking at are these investigating teams from NICA, PNP, and the MIA services? Are they looking at CCTV footage also?
Yeah, yes, you are correct. We do have CCTV footages that are available, and they're looking into it. And of course, there are equipment logs that they can look into, as well as the different employees who were on duty at that time, as well as the other people that were around the area. Of course, Terminal 3 is very big. That was the terminal that got affected in May 1. So it's a very big area where they have to look into. But we can assure the public that we are on top of this. And in fact, the Interagency Task Force has already begun their investigation and is starting to go around Terminal 3 to gather evidence.
And you are on top of this, and whatever the investigation shows, you will make those responsible. You will hold to account those responsible, right?
Yes, ma'am. And of course, the corrective actions that needs to be done will be implemented
Okay.
so that we can make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Brian, I still have more questions for you at the last part of the show, so please stick around first. We will be back after a quick break. We're speaking to the Acting General Manager of the Manila International Airport Authority, Brian Ko. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. What is the economic impact of the temporary shutdown of the country's airspace? We have our second guest tonight, also via Zoom, joining us via Zoom, economist Michael Ricafort. Mr. Ricafort, good evening. Thank you very much for being with us. For the January 1 shutdown, you said the estimate was 100 million pesos in losses and 56,000 passengers, 282 flights affected. Itong May 17, the one that's coming, of 6-hour shutdown, what are the numbers we're looking at? Would you have that available already?
Yeah, it ranges between about 100 to 300 million pesos. That's in a given day. And that would be largely on passengers taking airlines, most especially the foreign tourists. Because in a day, if we do the math for the contribution to our economy for foreign tourism business alone, it's around 600 million pesos per day. But definitely, about a third or about half of which would be disrupted by of course, by the closure of airport operations. So definitely, it would mean foregone spending on accommodation, on travel related, of course, even restaurants and eating out, and the retailers. So that would be the range, the economic
Range, yeah.
impact should there be a disruption.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm a little bit surprised by your numbers. Kanina kasi yung January 1, 100 million. Now you're saying May 17, 100 to 300 million? 300
But
million?
because we already have more tourists right now compared to
Okay.
compared to a few months ago. But that would be the lower end of the target estimated impact on the economy would be at least 100 to 200 million pesos. So because well, why? What's the dilemma, especially from the point of view of foreign tourists? Their vacation or their leaves are finite, so they may have to spend it, and and unfortunately, they have other choices in terms of other countries as other options, given the constraints on the time that they have to take their break or their vacation. So definitely it would the foregone business would go to the other alternative destinations, maybe in the region or maybe in other countries. So those are the realities, and of course, when it comes to of course, certainty is also very important, and predictability, because even if there would be surprises, just like what happened last May 1 and also last January 1, there would be last minute changes to be made by those most especially foreign as well as domestic tourists. So imagine if they cannot arrive at their
Destination.
places of destination within the country. So they have to forego what they would otherwise be spending.
Yeah. Totoo
on
yan.
many other
Oo.
related industries.
Oh, totoo yan eh. If you want to go, for example, to Boracay and then there's a problem, whatever problem there is, you choose another destination. But I want to ask, no, kanina you said, the certainty and predictability. So what we want to do is is to provide that certainty and predictability. So what do we do now? Because government and MIAA, for example, they're all saying we're doing our best to rehabilitate, to make things better. At the same time, there is that extreme that other solution, this 100 billion peso NAIA rehabilitation consortium. So for private sector to come in and take over what obviously hasn't been going very well these last few years.
Yeah, well, those are very important. When it comes to investments on infrastructure, because this has been ongoing for, well, at least for the proposals of the biggest businesses and conglomerates in the country. As far as I can remember, maybe for the past 20 or so years, the proposal, well, it may have taken different forms, different administrations, but it has always been there. Well, it was objective really is to, well, further upgrade the facilities because the country has yet to catch up with the other ASEAN and Asian neighbors when it comes to the number of tourists, the tourism revenues. So there's still that big opportunity because, well, what's constraining the numbers and the revenues? It's the capacity of, well, primarily the gateways, the airports. Well, at least we already saw some improvement, some expansion in the capacity, like say 5, 10, or more or so years ago. So yeah, that's and of course the other forms of infrastructure. Yeah, because this is one of the promising sources of economic growth and development, and also the job generator for the country, tourism. So it's really, well, it's really a concerted effort. Well, of course, predictability is very important. Well, at least the one for the upcoming one, it's scheduled. So that's why, yeah, well, at least the tourists, whether foreign or local tourists, they have ample time to prepare. And unlike the surprise ones, like last May 1 and January 1.
Well,
so that's why that
well, isa pang surprise, no, nagkataon kasi na, well, pinalitan for the moment itong general manager. So, very quickly, in 30 seconds, can you tell us, what kind of an effect does that have? If you're talking about certainty and predictability, tourists planning to come here, then what? Tinanggal yung general manager ng Manila International Airport Authority, What anong dating nun?
Well, what's really key is of course, on the operation side. As long as the operations, there's continuity, and of course there won't be any disruptions, and of course create well, an important well, at least it's really the experience. That's a part of the branding for tourist destinations that we have that the country needs to compete with, enable, because that's still very promising going forward. It has the country has yet to tap the potential to further boost our number of tourists. Of course, it comes with increased capacity, and of course all the logistics that come along, and of course the creation of more jobs, and yeah, of course it would lead to further development of more tourist destinations, and that would really be a major economic growth driver going forward. Well, in terms of dollar revenues, it would be at least $5 to $7 billion and still growing. Well, compared to the other countries, it's maybe double or more than double or triple than that. And also the number of tourists, and it would also complement the other sources of the bright spots for the economy, like OFW remittances at more than $40 billion per year, and BPO revenues at more than $35 billion per year.
Okay, Michael Ricafort, thank you for being with us, economist. But you'll join us in the last segment of the show. More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual. We're talking about turbulence in the air sector. here on Politics as Usual. We're on our final stretch. Brian Ko, acting general manager of the MIAA, is joining us via Zoom. So is Michael Ricafort, economist. Brian, does the general manager have the authority to reassign personnel? Is it in his list of functions? It is something he can do, in other words.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, that's very normal for a general manager. That's part of the management prerogative to actually reassign people based on, of course, the assessment that they've done during the observation period. And of course, this has been done before in previous management of the MA, and of course in different
and in many other
companies of the government as well.
And in many other private companies, for example. So if yes, where is the grave abuse of authority in this case? And I'm sure you're going to say, I can't answer that, right? You can't answer that.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
next question. Ano ba yung kultura sa NAIA? Can you say it in one sentence? Sa MIAA.
Well, sa MIA po, of course, there are people that are really hungry for change, and they want to contribute to the country.
Okay.
And I think they're very positive right now that it's really change and trying to have a better service to provide to our passengers. That's what we see in them, the hunger in terms of wanting to change and contribute to our economy.
This, of course, is an anonymous complaint, and I'm not going to ask you about the complaint, but the question here, as an assistant secretary said earlier today, ang mangyayari kasi kailangan, if this does go to trial, kailangan may witnesses, may testigo. May lilitaw pa kaya? May lilitaw ba?
Because to date, even we were actually surprised by this suspension of the GM, because there were no prior complaints from any employees of the MIA. There were no civil service complaints as well.
All right. Does this make the case for a consortium to take over NAIA?
Well, the MIA and the DOTR is very supportive of the different ways of how we can improve the airport, and that includes a possible PPP. And as you know, recently we've received an unsolicited proposal from the consortium, and apart from that, the DOTR is also looking into a solicited approach. That's why we tapped ADB to be our transaction advisor. So I think with or without this incident, or of course, what's very important, as mentioned, would be the continuity. So we're looking at how possibly the private sector could manage things better, if ever. So we're looking at the different angles and what's the benefit for the government. But ultimately, if it will redound to the improvement of passenger experience, of course, that's the main goal.
Okay, and earlier you said na tuloy lang ang mga programs, meaning tuloy ang programa ni Cesar Chong, whom you worked with together at PALEX, right? Now, very quickly, Mr. Ricafort, you have 10 seconds for final words. 10 seconds.
Yeah, so it's very important now to develop tourism and of course further development of the country's infrastructure, like the key airports, especially the main international gateways, would support that in terms of increasing capacity, going towards that objective and goal. So yeah, so it would be, well, at least there are proposals also to develop the Bulacan Airport as to complement, as well as the Sangli Airport, and on top of the contribution of Clark Airport. And of course, it's a welcome development to have, well, at least large investments to further upgrade NAIA from the country's biggest conglomerates and businesses.
Thank you very much to our guests tonight. Michael Ricafort, the economist, and Brian Ko, acting GM of the MIAA. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show. Your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.